Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited. This episode of Ignited is brought to you by Chosen Foods, a San Diego-based health food company best known for starting the avocado oil craze.
You know, I love avocado oil because I can't burn down the kitchen. I mean, it has a really, really high smoke point, like 500 degrees, and a really beautiful neutral flavor, so I don't mess up the food even if I forget it on the stove for a little too long, which, let's admit, happens every once in a while.
Chosen Foods offers a variety of healthy fats and clean label products like avocado oil mayo and avocado-based salad dressings, so yummy. And they're helping people on their wellness journey through the promotion of natural, real food made with clean label ingredients.
So for 50% off your order of $10 and more, all you got to do is visit chosenfoods.com/ignited and use promo code IGNITED50. That's IGNTD50 during checkout.
Awesome.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And Noah is here with us as usual. So if you hear her gulping, she's just having a meal. And, you know, today we're going to talk a lot about coming from different places and coming together and really the work that it takes to do that. The tools, the effort, the time that you have to put in for that. And it ties really well to the conversation we have with our amazing marriage and family therapist that we talked to today, Ashley Graber, that you'll hear after our little intro here. But, you know, one of the things that came front and center to me when we were having this discussion is just how different, again, Sophie, you and my childhood were.
Yeah.
Completely different universes we grew up in.
Yeah. The way that we were parented, our experiences, all of it.
Yeah. I mean, the way our parents talked to us, the way they communicated with each other. You know, we talk about something in this episode that we mentioned in that relationship course, and we'll put a link to the relationship course if any of you are either getting into relationships, getting out of relationships, or in relationships, or are struggling. Really easy, you know, pretty quick course online that we have.
Highly recommend it, no matter what stage of your relationship you're in.
Yeah, and dirt cheap. It's like less than one therapy session.
Exactly.
And you have access to it forever and all these tools. But the cool thing is, you know, we talk about all these tools, and one of them is this feelings wheel. And I remember the first time that I saw that feelings wheel, and literally the thought in my head was like, there are this many feelings?
Exactly.
You know, there's so many words to describe the way you feel, and I didn't come from a place where I ever heard any of those, let alone somebody kind of even mentioning to me what each one of those means. Like I just didn't even know that they existed. Probably until you were kind of laughing about it on the podcast, but probably till I was like in my 30s.
Yeah. I think that's the way most people are in our country. Sadly, I think we're limited with how we feel. We're a very go culture, and it's success oriented. Like things are good or they're bad.
Yeah.
Things are high or they're low.
Right. I'm happy or I'm sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's not like, I feel accomplished.
No, there's
like,
no
that's
like,
just not a word that you necessarily get put in to that's a feeling state I can have.
Yeah. There's just no nuance to it.
And then what happens is you get into these unnuanced relationships with people because
exactly.
Today you made me feel good.
Yeah.
Yesterday you made me feel bad. And like
you bought me something. So yeah, today was a good day.
Yeah. And bad or good don't get nuanced. Like you don't, instead of I felt good, if you bought me something, I feel appreciated or I feel acknowledged, you know, all that stuff just disappears. And I mean, it's kind of crazy how much that explains to me now looking back at the way I grew up. And I felt inside like things were either good or terrible.
Right.
There was like no middle ground.
Yeah.
I'm still a little bit like that. Like, you know, I get like yesterday when I had like a negative turn, an amazing day, and then a negative turn, and it's it disappears.
One negative thing out of 10 amazing things, like really incredible things, and you focused on the one bad thing, and we're like in a bad mood.
Because it's like good or terrible.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, if it's good, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Right? There can't be anything bad in the good.
Right. Yeah. Like the nuance to yesterday would have been like, I had all these incredible things happen. Let me acknowledge those things and how they each made me feel. And then this other thing that could be perceived as bad could actually be really good. It's all how I approach it and look at it.
Always.
And like what I take from this.
Sure. Always.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, I mean, you know, there's no way to turn back the clock, obviously, and we're trying to do some of this work with our kids. I love the idea of printing out
We're doing
the wheel and having it. I mean, just you and I even talking about it, let alone with the kids.
Yeah.
You know, because
I think even, you know what I was thinking? Between Kai and Leo, them discussing it together, like tell Kai how you're feeling. Tell
and like
Leo.
find, how cool would it be to just go find the word
Exactly.
on the wheel of, oh wait, this one described, this is the closest thing. It's like warm, cold almost, right? Like the describing, oh, this is how I feel. And even in conversation between you and I, like, look, we've done a lot of work and we'll keep doing more, but it gets away from you sometimes. Like sometimes you're just having a shitty day, and so the tools kind of pull out. Like it's just harder to go to use those tools. And so to have something we can go back to and go, hey, we're fighting, we're arguing. How do you feel? How do you feel?
Yeah.
And point it out there.
And then at least we can understand where the other person is.
Which is almost always what it means anyway. Like
that's
all the other person wants anyway.
That's all we ever want, is just to be seen and heard and felt.
Totally. So I love that. I think, I mean, I literally am going to go print that out when we're done recording this thing. But it was really, growing up, I had none of those tools. So when you don't have them at all, you also aren't aware that you need them.
Right.
Because nobody went, oh, you're missing an emotional vocabulary. Go study feelings. And
that's why I think that their school is so beautiful, because the first couple years, they don't learn to read and write. They learn how to navigate their feelings. They learn how to show up to each other. They learn how to handle disagreements by using their words, by hearing the other, by listening. That's some real skills that most of us aren't taught.
Yeah.
Is that crazy that we're not taught such basic skills?
Never. Like
how to navigate.
At most, I would hurt somebody at school, or somebody would hurt me at school, and somebody would
and
go,
you work it out.
Hey, don't do that anymore.
Right.
Don't hurt them.
You just end it. Okay, no more fighting. Period. Yeah. Okay, but why are you fighting?
Yeah.
How could we handle this differently next time? What were you feeling at the time?
No, I mean, the number of times
Jack was feeling this. Sam was feeling this. Okay. Oh, I didn't realize that. Like, just that acknowledgement of like a human feeling.
I don't even know how much of it they actually really are able to absorb, but at least they understand
it's
the
exposure.
process.
It's like, exposure to the process.
Oh, I'm supposed to care about how the other person feels versus I'm just supposed to stop doing bad stuff.
Exactly.
And again, I mean, you've sat in a lot of these sessions with me, obviously, and some of the online stuff we've done, but the number of times that, this is why I feel like therapy one day will just be automated version, like artificial intelligence. The number of times I've sat with a couple and they talk about a fight, and I said, well, why is this important to you? Or why does this really matter to you, this fight? And then they have to get into the core issues versus you told our daughter she could sleep in our bed and I didn't want her to, or you didn't do the dishes, or you took my car. That's where it always starts. Mark used to talk about, like, not talking about the specifics. The way I deal with that with people now, they say, why is this important? And they have to get to the why of this. Like, because if you don't know what it is you're really fighting about, you can never fix it. It just becomes about stupid shit, just stupid things you don't really care about.
In the spirit of honoring our therapist who passed away recently, can we change the relationship tip we were just going to do or add to it?
Sure.
And have a little markism?
Yeah. Not about the details?
It's not about the details. I think that was one of the best lessons
absolutely
he taught us.
To this day, we get caught in the middle of a fight and we go, okay, hold on. Why are we talking about the specifics? Let's get away from that.
But you didn't do those 3 dishes and you didn't. It's not about the details. It's about what's underneath that.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like you're not helping out enough.
Or I feel unappreciated, or I feel taken for granted, right? I feel ignored.
Yeah. You know? And what's under that?
I feel used, right?
Hurt.
Like if you're the one doing the dishes all the time, the fact that the other person didn't do the dishes is not about them doing the dishes or not. It's about the fact that you feel like they're taking advantage of you. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm always doing this. And then they obviously have a feeling that is involved in that relationship as well. And then what I've realized almost, not every time, but it happened to us and it happens with the couples I work with. When you get to that core, what you realize is you're both actually fighting on the same side. Like I'll give an example, for instance, like this couple that I've done work with them for a while, but their daughter sleeps with the mom. She falls asleep with the mom in bed every night. And it's like their ritual. But she's getting older. She's almost 8. And the dad's been hating this for a little while and they've had fights about it, etc. But the fight is about, I think she needs to be able to take care of herself, and she needs to be able to go to bed and fall asleep by herself and not be with you and not like fall asleep in our bed every time. And it messes up they can't go out, because if they go out to dinners, the daughter won't sleep until they come back home. So there's consequences.
Sure.
When we got deeply into it, there were a couple of things. A, the husband kind of feeling like left out.
Yeah.
Because the two of them have their thing.
They're bonding.
And he's not in there.
Yeah.
And he also is afraid, because he grew up in a family where there were rules and you followed the rules. And the rule was you fall asleep in bed. And he feels like it's setting up his daughter for failure down the line. So when you get to that, I'm a little jealous of the bonding you have. I want some of that bonding with you. And I'm afraid that we're setting my daughter up for failure down the line. And then the wife, her reasoning was, I work all the time. I want some time with my daughter.
Yeah.
And if I only get it at bedtime and it's messing up her little sleep schedule a little bit, then it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
But once we got to the core, they came to a compromise in like 3 minutes.
It's great.
And it was so beautiful to watch.
What was their compromise?
So the funny thing is, the wife initially actually suggested that maybe the daughter only sleep in their bed during the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I looked at the husband, because
They haven't done this.
They've never done this.
Yeah.
And he thought, I was thinking like 2 days, not the whole week. And all of a sudden, he actually walked it back. Like he was the quote unquote bad guy who wanted her not to sleep with her mom for days. But all of a sudden, he said, no, I don't want 4 days.
Yeah.
Just 2 days.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we were able to make it a really cool thing where the wife was actually giving up some of her own time for work, because she works really hard, especially Wednesdays and Thursdays. And on those days, she was giving up some of the stuff for the ritual. And all of a sudden, she was able to claim some of what she needed. And it was all because they were able to get down to, I don't want my daughter to be set up for failure, and I want more time with you.
Yeah.
Oh, I want bonding time with my daughter. How do we get it all done together?
And they were able to articulate their feelings about the issue instead, and like what was underneath that, versus
Noah agrees.
Versus talking around the issue. It's okay.
Yeah. It's that's what we all do so much. I mean, everybody listening right now can relate to having fights with somebody else where you're fighting about 12 different things. You make it a fight about, you didn't do this yesterday and I didn't do the thing before, and you never care about, and then you can't fight about 12 things. And at the core of all of those typically are feelings that you just haven't expressed and haven't been explored and haven't been acknowledged. And if you can, once you get there and you can do that, half the stuff goes away.
Exactly.
So
So powerful.
Absolutely. So look, this is absolutely, I think, in honor of Mark, who passed away suddenly, and played a pivotal role in our marriage still being here.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, the biggest lesson we would keep going back to over and over and over is, it's not about the details. Get into the why.
Yep.
And if you can do that not just in your fights, in your communication with your partner, you will grow and you'll increase your intimacy and you will connect more and more and more.
100%. And you can even look at kids as a practice. Look at the way kids fight. But you hit the da-da-da, and then you took my Batman toy, and then like, it's not about the details. It's like, I'm feeling X.
Yeah.
I'm feeling Y.
And
okay.
A lot of times they just can't express it, although we're going to give you some tools in this podcast to allow them to start expressing it better. But you're an adult. So grow up a little bit.
Yep.
We'll post a link to the feeling wheel, which I think we might have shared even once before already. And get that thing and do a little studying, right? We all need help sometimes. Get a little help figuring out how you feel. Get to the other side of whatever's going on for you, and go live your blessed, ignited life.
Exactly.
I like that. That's a good transition to the interview.
Yep.
All right. Wait for this, and then we'll see you on the other side for the conversation.
Talk to you soon. This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fixed all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to this part of the Ignited podcast, the conversation portion. We've talked about mindfulness and meditation here before. We've had Ryan, we've had Light Watkins on here. And this conversation is going to do that, but with a slant, which I really love and I'm going to be really excited for. So we have Ashley Graber here with us today. And Ashley, you're a licensed MFT.
I am.
And you work in Santa Monica. But there's a little bit more to that story. So why don't you introduce our listeners to who you are?
Sure, thank you. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm also a meditation and mindfulness educator. So I've been taught to teach meditation and mindfulness to adults, but also to children. And that is a big part of my practice, both teaching meditation and mindfulness, but also seeing kids for psychotherapy. And I always say, if you come to my practice, you're gonna meditate, but we just may not call it that.
Nice.
And certainly, depending on the age of my patient, we would need to make it look a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I also started and run the Mindfulness for Families program at the Center for Mindful Living.
Awesome.
This was a program that really the owners of the center and myself felt like is really needed, and is also something that is just so valuable to families. So
And when you say needed, I mean, I have ideas about why it's needed. Why did you feel like it was needed?
Well, I think, parents, as you guys well know, are often going in 90 different directions, and if the more kids you add in, the more directions you're going in. And families really need tools, not only to help calm what may be sort of active, but also ways to connect for just those reasons that you often are going in a lot of different directions. And, the mindfulness tools that we see that really help people are the ones that help just those pauses in the day, those moments that they can figure out how to weave it into their day.
Yeah.
And that's the real key to it. And that's why I think it's needed, because everybody is sort of go, go, go. And we have everything sort of coming at us so quickly. And so this opportunity and need to slow down is really what we saw. And how, what parents say to me all the time is, I just don't have time to weave it in.
You see that there's I love this, by the way. I'm so excited. This is so much fun. And actually, I've been just starting to once a week lead a meditation for the kids before bed just to relax them. And it's made such a difference. They just fall right to sleep and they're so relaxed. I love it so much. I have a lot of questions that came up already, but my first question is there an age that you've noticed that it's more important to start? Because I feel like kids are always in the moment, right? They're like so present for the most part. Mm-hmm. It does start to kind of I noticed Kai started nibbling on his nails around age 6. Mm-hmm. In my mind, in my intuition, it's that he's feeling anxious about something that happened or something that's gonna happen. Mm-hmm. And it's that's where the, anxiety is because of that. It's something you're future tripping or you're, ruminating about something from the past. So when he was 3, he wasn't biting his nails, right? He wasn't in the past. He wasn't in the future. He was just in the present moment. He was playing with his toys. He was with his mommy, whatever it was in that moment. Is there an age where kids kind of start to be less present and start to have maybe more fears or more anxieties or just lose that present moment, ability and then have to start meditation?
That's such a good question. I wouldn't say that there's an across-the-board answer to something like that, because so much is dependent on what has the child's sort of life been like, and even
Experience.
even starting in utero.
Yeah.
What was the pregnancy like for the mom? What were the circumstances that were going on?
Totally.
So it's really particular to each child. But as you were asking that question, I was thinking that the question you were going to ask me is, what's the best age to start? And my answer was going to be in utero. That is
habit.
Yes. Well, it's the habit, but it's also that a child can then come into the world with, sort of a knowing of what that's like. They're already sort of used to being, in mommy's belly and the movement of that. And so when they come into the world and you're doing that with them, that just means it's going to sort of help them, because meditation's a funny thing. If we do it regularly and with consistency, then the sort of overall umbrella is going to be more calm. But then when you see things like the, example that you used of the nail biting, for sure there's something going on, right? And that could be environmental, that could be biological, that could be school. It could be all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
So, the more that they are sort of used to doing these kinds of things, the easier it is when you start to notice something like that. Now, having said that, if you didn't start then, that doesn't mean all bets are off.
No, but this is totally the point that I make to a lot of people. When a lot of people talk about how our kids are relatively well behaved. It's funny, everything is relative in life, right? So you compare your own kids to themselves, and then one will be kind of more boisterous and energetic, and another will be calmer. And so you start thinking that the one that has more energy is bad or somehow acting up. But relative to a lot of other people that we see, our kids are pretty calm and well behaved. And so I always equate a lot of that to Sophie's yoga practice and her meditations, which she absolutely continued through all pregnancies, and was not something that was at all part of my background before I met Sophie. And so it was really interesting. A lot of women that I know who get pregnant just kind of go on with their lives as they were before. And Sophie did as well, but her life already included yoga and meditation in it. And so reductions in cortisol, and all the stress hormones that mothers have, and just the anxiety that you feel in everyday life. She already had tools to manage that to some extent. And I can't believe that didn't transmit to the baby in utero somehow through just different chemicals that were coursing through her blood and therefore got to the baby. So I totally agree with that. And we see it in our life.
Yeah, it absolutely 100%. I kind of assumed that you had, just because of following you on Instagram and seeing you, at least with the
Noah.
pregnancy, with Noah, that what you talked about, and doing meditation or yoga, any of it is going to bring a sense of calm to that child. And also, I always tell parents and I always tell teachers, you're the one that holds the energy of the space, right? So the more that you can do these practices, the better off that everyone that's in your space will be, whether that's a home or a classroom.
Yeah.
I think my natural homeostasis is just relaxed too, though. I think I have a lot of energy and I love to do a lot of things, and but I think my baseline is just also more relaxed. It's not like I'm meditating and doing yoga all day. Yes, it's part of my practice. Yes, I use it as tools to become more calm and help with anxiety. But I think it's also your natural disposition. They grew up, in utero, in my body that doesn't experience a lot of anxiety. I was sick with them in the first trimester, but they were a little tiny cell at that point, right. Or a collection of cells. I think when it, second and third trimester, I was just myself, and I'm just naturally very calm and relative. Everything's relative, right?
Well, but also I don't think that they're separate.
They're not separate.
Yesterday in the morning, you had me move this table not to do jumping jacks and lift weights right here in the dining room, but to do a yoga flow. Yeah. And that is I think they go together. So yeah. And this is probably, you said you work a lot with kids, Ashley, and it's my sense is that to do this well, talked about this already a little bit, but it has to be part of your life versus a thing you do every once in a while. Because if it's a thing you do, you haven't really incorporated it in, right? It's the same with exercise. When people try to diet or exercise in a way that is limited, I'm going to go on a diet for 30 days. Well, that's not going to do 30 days out of your life. If you literally think about how much time that is, that's nothing. That's like 1% of your life. That's not going to cause, I don't care how amazing the diet is and how powerful it is. If that's what you do, it's not going to cause any long-term impact. If you change your diet, as in you change the way you eat, period, then you will gain mass, lose weight, whatever it is that you're looking to do, because over time, the accumulation, and I have a sense that it's the exact same thing with mindfulness. You can teach anybody the practices. They're not difficult practices to teach. There's got to be a skill though, and being able to, and we talked about this a little bit before we started. I work with adults where I try to introduce mindfulness all the time, and I get the exact same answer, whether they have kids or not. I don't have the time.
Right.
It's like, okay. And then I start working. I mean, I introduce for people like how to make coffee mindfully. Just put something in your life that you can start making, that you already do. Brush your teeth mindfully. Walk your dog mindfully. Do something you're already doing. Just change the way you do it. And if you can teach it to kids, then there's got to be a way to be able to teach it to pretty much all adults, right? So what's the trick? Like, kids are not, you said about language and some of that, right? That's probably some of the thing. You don't call it meditation.
Sure.
What are some of the tricks you found that make it really accessible for children?
Sure. So, it's funny because this idea that you don't have enough time to do it, what's so funny is that when you do it, that you actually make more time in the day.
Sure.
So, and we know for all the reasons
it's
why.
like give busy people stuff to do and they'll get it more done.
That's
it's
right.
It's the same concept.
It's exactly right.
You have the time.
You have the time.
That is not an excuse. Erase that from your list.
So with kids, what's funny is that I've worked in treatment for a number of years. And
treatment as an addiction treatment?
Correct.
Oh,
correct.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I would bring in curriculum from Mindful Schools, but Mindful Schools is the curriculum that teaches you to teach kids, right? Because I would take and break it down to the lowest common denominator for people who were, beginners at it, right? So for, and I know you asked me about kids, but for adults, it's the same thing. Like if I can just break it down to the lowest common denominator and then ask, okay, so can we try 5 minutes a day, for the next week? And if they come back and they can't do 5 minutes a day, it's like, okay, well, can we do 1 minute a day? Okay, they come back and they're not doing that. It's like, okay, can you set an alarm in your phone that just says breathe once a day and you take one breath? And what I notice is that over time, they feel better, even taking one breath.
Absolutely. And it's like that with fitness too. I'm a personal trainer and a yoga instructor, and it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. It's like, just go work out for 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Inevitably, it always leads to more.
Exactly.
For myself, I'm like, I'm just going to, fine, I'll go on a 10-minute jog.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, oh, I feel good. I'll just keep going. And then I come back and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do some sit-ups.
Or even if you don't, the next day you might feel good doing 12 minutes. And
That's
I think it's a process. And so many people want immediate results, right? Like, I thought meditation was going to make me less anxious and feel better. What the hell? I did 3 minutes and it didn't. I'm never doing this
3
again.
3 minutes once a week.
Once. Not even once a week. Once, ever. And it's like, that did not make me feel more comfortable.
It doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't work.
Meditation's broken.
I get that all the time. With some of my clients in treatment, I would literally, like one of them, I remember this so distinctly. She had no time. And by the way, super busy job, all that stuff. She could have found the time, but I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have that fight with her. So literally all we agreed on in the end was when she parked her car for work every day, she had a designed space. When you park your car, I want you to just count the steps on the way to your desk. That's it. It doesn't look like mindfulness, but it's like 5 minutes you would take to yourself. So she come back the next day and she goes, what do I do when somebody wants to talk to me on the way to the thing? And it was so cute because it's the same thing people go through when you try to get them to sit and breathe. Those interrupting thoughts come in and they go, I couldn't do it because I had interrupting thoughts. I go, we all have interrupting thoughts. Like, who told?
Keep going.
Why did this thing of the monk on top of the mountain, sitting in lotus and completely clear?
The monk even has thoughts.
First of all, he probably has thoughts. But secondly, he's been doing this for like 40 years.
Every day.
You're not quite there for hours, right? So it would be really great. I said, talk to the person and then just start counting again from zero, from whatever you were before, whatever you can do. And that allowed her to eventually, she got to a place where she took a 10 to 15 minute break in the middle of every day to do meditation in her office. It took like 6 months to a year to get to that place.
Exactly.
But it's okay because along the way she felt better.
That's right. That's right. It is a great metaphor for life, isn't it? That you're going along trying to do something and you get interrupted, right? And when you get interrupted, what happens to you, right?
Can you come back to
center? Exactly. Can you come back to center?
Yeah.
So for the kids, I mean, it's so simple. Right now, I have kids doing. Either we make what's called a glitter jar or a mind jar. You may have heard of these, right? And so it's a jar, and I have glitter that has all different feelings. Each color is a different feeling, and we talk about different feelings, and then we take the glitter and we put it in the glitter jar for all the feelings that we might have. And it affords an opportunity to also talk about feelings and how we have a lot of them, and sometimes we have them at the same time, and sometimes we don't even know what they are, but we know that there's a lot of them. And so we put the glitter jar in. The key to this, and I'm happy to write this out for your readers if there's a place to put it, but the key to making this is the glitter glue. That's what helps the glitter to not settle so quickly. And so the jar represents, as we talk about it, what happens inside of us, the thoughts, the emotions, the physical sensations. So we shake it up and we get to see that our view gets cloudy, our perception gets thrown off. Maybe we can't even see what's happening anymore when we get activated, when that stuff gets kicked up. And so if we watch it settle, so we'll set it down and then we watch it settle. And what they don't know is that I'm timing it to make sure that it doesn't settle before a minute. So we sort of add more glitter glue or take some away. But we shake it up and we watch it settle, and they get to see that the thoughts, the emotions, and the physical sensations are still there, but that we can see again, that our perception is clear again. And everybody likes to watch the glitter. And when you sit for a minute and you stare at something, which is mindfulness, bringing your attention to one thing,
for a specific amount of time,
feel better. So with kids, I send them home with that, and then they get to shake up something pretty and watch it settle. I'll also maybe even suggest to a family putting it on if they eat together, can you put it on the dining room table? And then if you've got a number of kids, each night one would get to shake it up, and the whole family watches it settle. And what an amazing moment of weaving in mindfulness for a minute. Not only are you taking a mindful moment, but you're slowing down before you eat.
Yeah.
Right? You're slowing down your day. You're all connecting. That's
beautiful.
That.
So we'll definitely put a link to some instructions or something on how to create that jar. Because that's, again, what I love about it is you make it not about, hey, here's a tool that's going to make you feel better. You make it about an activity that either they love or they already engage in that still gives them that break.
It becomes about observing something pretty instead of like, hey, we're going to do this thing on mindfulness.
Right, exactly. Or we're going to have to sit still and focus on our breath, which
Don't
is
move
kind
for
of
a
weird.
minute.
Right, exactly.
No, let's look at it. Oh, let's see how long it'll take.
I could totally see Leo, though. Leo's the more rambunctious one that we have. He was the one climbing on the staircase when you were coming in. I could see him kind of having a hard time totally being still for the whole thing, but being relatively still. So compared to how he would be otherwise, still looking at it and pointing things out and talking about what's happening in the jar.
Yes.
Oh, I was just going to say, Adi and I saw this astrologer in Tulum when we were there. I was pregnant with Noah at the time, and she was amazing, like amazing. Read our charts and read a little bit of Leo's chart and said that essentially he's my biggest teacher and I'm his, and we're kind of opposite reasons for being here this lifetime. And the thing that she said the most about him that would heal him is spending time alone, because it'll allow, and like connecting to his spiritual side, meditating, yoga, all the things that are really hard for him. And it's so interesting, right? The things that are so hard for us are our biggest lessons in life and make us stronger. And she was really, really like adamant about making sure that he carves out time like that. So I could totally see him sitting down and like each time maybe it becoming a little easier, but it helping him in the long run. Like even after he's just quiet for a minute, if like his quote unquote punishment is like a timeout, a peacetime, we called it when they were little. Who doesn't need a peacetime, right?
I'll take one right now, please.
Like take a little time, just like sit quietly, and then he's better for it, for like 30 minutes, he's way more calm because he had a moment to just sit and collect himself and be in his own thoughts instead of being so frazzled, and it's just so interesting how like all these different tools can help different types of dispositions and people and bodies and energies.
Yeah, well, you speak to something so important that over time, I mean, you were talking about with your adult client, you're talking about it with your child, right? That over time, we get sort of quote unquote better at it. And I always use the metaphor of sports or dance or music with kids because it's easy for them to understand if they play soccer, that the first time they went on the soccer field, it was a little awkward and maybe uncomfortable, but that the 10th time they went, it was different. And then the 20th time they went, it was different. And then for whatever it is, and they can go, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. So that metaphor will make sense that in time, something becomes second nature and it actually just becomes easier, by nature of that, and to speak to like, he may not sit still when you do it. And especially when you do it with families, I try to teach families that there's, a real importance of acceptance and non-judgment around what their children are doing. And most importantly, right, to not pay attention to them, but take the time for yourself, right? That we can often get into, I want them to get something out of this.
And then we're taking ourselves out of the same exact experience.
Yeah, it's funny how I didn't, like when Adi was telling that just now, like it didn't even occur to me that like Leo wouldn't sit still. Of course he wouldn't sit still, but that's okay. That's who he is,
right?
And like, I think I've done so much observing because I've gone to every yoga class that they've ever taken. And like, he's never going to sit still in Shavasana. That's not who he is. Like, are you kidding? Like, that's not even an option. But his eyes are closed for half of it. Yes. He's relaxed his body for a fourth of it. Yes. And he's listening for half of it. Yes. So like, to me, it's like it's all relative, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And this is the overarching sort of thing that happens too, is that the more that they do it, right, the better off they will be for it,
exactly.
And why people's, anxiety goes down when they meditate regularly, why their depression gets better when they meditate regularly, and why it doesn't when they don't do it regularly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's better for it. Like, we don't know how he feels inside. Like he loves yoga. There's a reason he loves going to class.
I think that's the hardest thing. I mean, what I love about that lesson about talking to kids about feelings in that way is one of the hardest things for me. And it's funny, I completely, as I'm sure we do too, a million things that happen to us in life, completely underestimated how hard this was for my parents, let's say with me and my sister. But they can't vocalize what's really going on for them inside. They don't really know. They don't have words. Maybe after practices like this, over a long period of time, understanding what different emotions mean, etc. And this would actually be a really good practice to do with them because we do it with our adult couples, clients about what are the feelings I'm having? How do I even name them? And so it starts, have you ever seen that feelings wheel? It starts with like sad, happy, mad, tired. And like, I think that's all I had as a kid was those 4 or 5 feelings.
Kid?
I have like 7 more now.
No. I'm saying when we first met, you were still there. Like,
absolutely, 100%.
Were you a kid at 27?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
So I had these 5, and then you go, okay, well, within mad, there could be like 12 variations of mad. And then for each one of those, there could be 3 variations of that. And when you develop a vocabulary, it's really interesting, but there's research, for instance, that shows that in cultures around the world, like native cultures in specific places, there are some colors that we talk about that they don't have. So I don't remember the exact research in the colors, but I'll just give an example. Like, let's say they don't have a yellow and a green. They have this other name for a color. So like blue, they have, I don't know if you know this, but like a lot of colors come from natural things we see in the world. So like brown from the dirt and red from other dirt. But blue is a really hard color for a lot of people to get because when you look up, the idea that the sky is blue, which is one of the only things you get unless you get actual oceans around you and big bodies of water. So a lot of cultures wouldn't have a name for blue, or kids, that's the latest color that they develop. And what they found is in those cultures, if you show them the 2 separate colors, they give you the word for their other color that they have that represents both. So, and what I'm saying is, if you don't have the language to describe your feelings, if you don't know what feeling you're having, you somehow end up kind of dismissing that feeling and just relegating it to something else. Like, if I don't understand that abandoned is how I feel right now, I might just say I'm mad.
Exactly.
Because I don't have abandoned in my vocabulary. Sure. So I think I feel mad, but I don't feel mad. I just feel upset that I feel like somebody abandoned me because I don't have the language.
And then you never feel heard. And then you never feel understood.
Because nobody understands you.
Or seen.
Yeah, or seen. And you can't even see yourself. You're like, I have this feeling, but I have no idea how to describe it. Yeah, I was thinking our therapist, who we like actually just found out passed away. Aww. Like so sad. He like saved our marriage. Mark.
Well, absolutely.
Amazing human. But he would always like kind of these feelings and this feelings wheel,
Yeah.
like pull it out of Adi and be like, what's under that? But what's under mad? But what's under
Sad,
frustrated?
yeah.
But what's under, and like, it was like, what's the emotion under that? Like,
But I really feel like even still today, I probably have to just look at, like, print that wheel out and
Exactly.
just look at what
For
options
sure.
there are.
Yeah.
Because I could probably match my emotion to an option better than I could come up with it on my own.
we should just print it out and put it on the back of the kid's door.
Yeah, and that could be fun with the kids too.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Kai did this to me. I'm angry.
We
could
Or
even
I'm mad at him. Well,
we could
why are
even
you mad?
color
And then
it.
we pick it.
We could color it and then like start with a color.
It is colored.
Oh, it is
Yeah.
colored.
Yeah, it's pre-colored.
Yeah, okay.
Which
Yeah.
is so. When you do this with kids, I assume that from the beginning, like you just mentioned, they don't even know how to describe the words. So that's why
Sure.
what the glitter is there for is kind of like
Yes.
attach it to a color.
That's right. And yes, and they oftentimes I'll just, there's a lot of different colors. So I'll just write out a number of different feelings and then put, specific glitter to it. But they'll often rearrange it based on what
cool.
they have learned or what they feel. Because they'll look at it and they'll say, well, this isn't, what, mad is, or just using that as an example, or angry is. And I'll say, well, then, and I'll get a marker and mark out the feeling and say, okay, well, what is it then?
You're saying based on the color.
Yeah,
Oh,
and so
cool.
they
Like
can
red
choose
is
it and
not
own it.
sad.
Yeah, they can choose it and own it for themselves, and so
I'm going to the art store when you leave.
Okay, good.
I'm making this today. I'm making this today.
Another key to it is to have both big glitter and small glitter.
Okay.
So you want to have both sides.
'Cause
And then
it'll
you
mix.
want to have, it will just, it's because the way that it lands, you want it to have the bigger glitter land first, and then you want the smaller glitter to take a little while longer.
Okay. I'm gonna get all the tips, guys. I'm gonna write a blog post on it.
There
I'm
you
gonna
go.
post this in the show
Good.
notes so that you can have the link to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love it. This is what's so hard for me. Is none of this ever got done when I was
Yeah.
a kid. Like zero.
That's why you get to redo it now.
I don't know that my family ever talked about a
no.
feeling. Ever.
Yeah.
And
He says it's the saddest thing in the world. This is like, get the tissues
still
out.
not done, but by the way, the
Get
experiment is still
the
not over.
tissues out. So Adi only speaks Hebrew to his family, and he moved to the States when he was 14, but they continued to speak Hebrew to each other only. And when Adi had children, he obviously only speaks Hebrew to them.
I mean, it's not obvious to a lot of people, but I only speak
to
Hebrew to them.
anyone that's like around us or
Yeah,
watches,
absolutely.
watches what we are up to. And he said that the words "I love you" in Hebrew sounded foreign and strange to him
Because nobody ever said it in our
No one
house.
ever said it to him.
Ever.
No one ever said it in their house.
And it wasn't that I thought my parents didn't love me. My parents loved me.
Sure.
Right.
But
You
there were no
felt it.
expressions of emotion, period, including love. Like bad or good emotions were never expressed. And so my kids probably hear me say, I love you now like 400 times a day.
They're like, all right, Dad, I get it.
But it felt really awkward at first.
Yeah.
And I told Sophie, I mean, I couldn't tell the kids because they were like zero. But it felt really, really awkward with Kai. And we've run an experiment. My mom doesn't listen to the podcast, so I can say this here because she won't hear. I've ended, not all, but most of our conversations, even by text or WhatsApp, with I love you. She doesn't say it back.
I'm getting in there a little bit though.
You are.
I'm like kind of.
She sent a
wiggling,
heart. She sent
I'm
a heart
wiggling
once.
in, and she's affectionate with me.
Oh,
She
has no problem showing her love.
but no, she'll say she loves me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's I'm outwardly like obnoxiously loving,
Right.
like in the best way.
I'm gonna love you till you say it.
Yeah. And she just opens up and she feels safe doing that. And I notice she's more loving with you after a couple of days of like wearing her down.
Yeah.
but even with you, I feel like even we have a group family text, like a WhatsApp.
Totally.
Sure.
And she'll like send a heart on Shabbat.
She
And,
sends
like,
hearts now and stuff,
Yeah.
which is a huge. It's
Progress.
That's actually
It
huge.
just
It's
shows
Yeah.
that people can change. And what I also do want to revisit, I think unlearning our parents' habits. I'd love to talk to you about this. I think that's what I'm picking up on in this conversation is just like, yeah, Adi didn't have a home where they express their feelings, whatever good, bad feelings. But now he is doing that, and like look at him actively saying, I'd love to use the feelings wheel with my children at age 6 and 8. I mean, that is huge. And so kind of like, I mean, I come from, like, my mom was all over the place. She's borderline. Like, we still don't have a relationship to date. It's very superficial. And, you know, we're friends on Facebook. And, like, she likes my images or, like, my kids' photos. And that's kind of it. And I've had to create a distance, you know, to the best of my ability to protect myself and my children and my sanity, because there's so many ups and downs and I can't trust it. And, you know, and it's a constant unlearning. It's a constant unprogramming, like deprogramming and cutting ties and energetic, you know, the ways that she parented us. And it was pretty dysfunctional. It's all the best she could do, given the fact that she's borderline and given the fact that she was single parenting.
And how she grew up. Right?
And how she grew up.
Her mom resented having children.
Totally.
She hated her kids.
Her mom had 5 children and never wanted any of them. And let all the children know that all the time.
It was the generation where it's kind of like her mom felt like literally like her tennis game and her career got interrupted by having children. But she had no quote unquote choice. And so she just kept having them. And
her dad died like pretty young from alcoholism.
So she came from a place where there was no love and no affection shown ever. If anything, there was resentment towards the fact that you even existed.
Wow. So then there's enormous growth because she was so loving with us, but at the same time, it was very dysfunctional.
Sure.
And like we moved around like almost every year for 10 years solid and changed schools every year after my parents divorced. And anyway, long story short, like now I'm at a place where I have these strong boundaries and I'm trying my best to like unlearn all those things. But I think it's so vital just to share, like you don't have to repeat old patterns that don't work for you. You get to make up your own rules as a parent and in your relationship, you know, like when I was marrying Adi, my mom was like, you're marrying your father, all this stuff, crazy stuff. And, you know, you could see things that way, or you could see like, this is a brand new relationship. I'm going to view it and treat it differently than my mom and dad treated each other, and not end in divorce ideally, and communicate and be honest and show up and be vulnerable and like all the things that, you know, make you a good partner.
How do you see that play out? So I mean, you see kids for therapy, and that's how the mindfulness comes in, right? They come for therapy. Yeah. So obviously something caused the family to believe that they need to come into therapy. So obviously you see dysfunction, you see things of that nature. How do you navigate that? Because it's a pretty tricky sea to navigate when you see dysfunction and you're trying to adjust the way the kid reacts to their world while still understanding that they're walking into that environment when they go back home.
Well, you guys, you know, the answer to that is really a systems answer, right? So the whole system sort of, there has to be something that we work with. And by the system, I mean the whole family that, you know, and especially with young kids, if you're bringing a little kid to me, there could be very possibly something biological going on, but oftentimes it's something in the family. And that doesn't mean that it's bad parenting, you know, or even bad parents, or it could be something that sometimes parents just don't even know. You know, there were oftentimes parents will have had a blip in their marriage, and the kids get really scared that they're going to get divorced, right? But the parents just don't understand how that lands on a child, you know. And the biggest part, I think, Sophie, you just spoke so much to this idea, the Dan Siegel's idea of parenting from the inside out, you know, understanding yourself. And that's where mindfulness can come in. It's like, how do you understand yourself from the inside out? You know, these practices help you to get there. You know, and when parents can come to me and they can start to see how they're reacting to what's happening with their child, so much changes when they can learn to respond rather than react to what's happening. You know, when they can learn to stay they can learn to stay with the child rather than step away, right? Or to shut down.
So hard. I mean, now, you know, we're up to 3 kids now. And it gets so tough.
It's a practice though. And I also like fully acknowledge when I'm not in a mindful place that I'm more reactive with them. If I'm trying to multitask and I'm trying to finish up my work for the day and it's like 3:30 on a Tuesday, like I'm overwhelmed and like I don't have those skills to not be reactive in that moment because I'm not being mindful. I'm like on my phone. I'm like, shh, be quiet. Like mommy's trying to finish something. And like, that's not fair to them.
That's what I'm saying is I don't know. I just feel like it's a real struggle to be able to, because you are actually pulled in 20 different directions. And so you have to really integrate these practices into your activities with your children and outside of your time with your children, because otherwise
you will
fill it up with something else. There will be prepping the meal or getting them out to school or getting the little bit of work that you want to get done, or holding the baby or feeding her.
I think it comes back to awareness, or mindfulness, whatever, however you want to phrase it. When I'm aware that I'm in a state of, I'm trying to get this last project done, I can vocalize that to them. Now they understand. Like baby Noah doesn't know. She doesn't care either. As long as she's on my shoulder, in my arms, she's fine. But the bigger boys, they can understand it now. I can say, hey, Mommy has to finish this one thing. It's going to take 7 to 10 minutes. Can you go play with your blocks? And then I'll play with you.
Right.
But give me 10 minutes. Let me just finish this thing. And then it also gives me that window to just fully show up to my work and then fully show up to the kids because I can put my phone away, right? Like, I think that it's awareness.
It is. And so much of it too is, what comes with that awareness is also knowing when you have acted in a way that doesn't feel good to you, or that doesn't feel good to your child, right? And that's okay because we're all human.
So what do you recommend? I mean, I know what we do with that, but what do you recommend when you recognize that that's happened?
So repair. That's the important thing. We have to make sure, I think what's most important in this is to check in with yourself and make sure that you feel calm and that you have had a moment to sort of be able to collect yourself. And excuse me, by that I mean, are you using a fully functioning brain, right? Are you activated still, or do you have the functioning of your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala? I teach the brain, Dan Siegel's flipped lid, to kids, to parents, to families. So checking in to make sure, and then your child. Nobody knows your child better than you do. When you look at your child, do they still look activated? We don't need to do anything in those moments. Repair does not have to happen in the moment. Teaching does not have to happen in the moment. You can go back at another time when everybody feels good again so that we can all hear each other.
And what do you mean by repair? So with a child, does that mean just giving them the space to recover?
I think it means active conversation. Like, I did something, I yelled earlier. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yell. I got upset because this was happening and this is what I was feeling inside, right? Something along those lines.
That's exactly right. I mean, which
we do. I mean, we absolutely do that. But.
Yeah. And I always say to parents, transparency. Age appropriate transparency, but transparency.
Totally.
Right? Mommy got mad. Right? Mommy,
I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Mommy shouldn't have yelled at you. And I imagine that didn't feel good. Right? And then wait to hear what they have to say. And then a lot of reflection that isn't fixing or making excuses.
It's amazing how forgiving they are. Every time I apologize or I'm humble or just I'm on their level, which I always am.
Yes.
Let's be honest. They're sometimes wiser than I am, oftentimes. They're so forgiving. They're like, it's okay, Mommy.
Can you?
That's right.
I think that's a really good point to make to people, though, about that reflecting without making excuses.
That's right. The reflecting without making excuses and never talking past where a kid is at. So really hearing what they have to say, just reflecting back. They say, Mommy, you hurt my feelings. Yeah. When Mommy raised her voice, she hurt your feelings.
And then leave it at that.
Leave it at that. I did it because I was so stressed out, and I told you already I had needed to work for 7 minutes.
They don't need to know that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, I think a funny thing that oftentimes I'll be sitting with parents and saying something to them like, I want you to repeat after me, that when a child talks, you go, oh. Wow.
Just acknowledge.
Yes. And it's so hard because oftentimes we want to fix. We don't want to see our kids are hurting, or we want to make an excuse. But we can just in that moment hear what they have to say. And like you said, they're so forgiving. They'll be like, okay. And then they're off.
Before we kind of wrap this up and go into our 5 questions we always ask.
Okay.
I want to just offer the listeners, parents, maybe even adults, a mindfulness exercise before bed. Do you have something that's pretty easy to kind of offer as a practice to either population, kids, adults, parents?
So I have a couple that I'll offer.
Yay.
Great.
Okay. So this is you can do a gratitude walk. Right? So oftentimes I hear in families, it's so hard to get kids to bed, right? They got to brush their teeth and do this and that. It just is one of the sort of more difficult times of the day. So you can do a gratitude walk. Maybe it's from the bathroom to the bedroom. Maybe it's around the living room, whatever it might be. And for every step you take, you say something you're grateful for, right? So you could have the kids do it. I would suggest being involved in it so that you each take a step and then you say something you're grateful for. Maybe you're going from the living room to the bedroom, and that's how you get there.
Love that.
The mind jar is a great thing to do. Everybody does it, at night when you just shake it up, right? Exactly. Shake it up and you watch it settle. Another one, so if everybody could imagine putting their one of their hands out flat and then taking their pointer finger and starting at the bottom at their wrist. And then on an in-breath, you go from the bottom of your wrist up to the top of your thumb, and that's a breath in. And then you go back down to the same spot right at your wrist. That's the breath out. And then you go up your pointer finger, breath in, and then back down, breath out, right?
That.
And so you do that. And depending, you might work up to both hands, right? So you start with one, and then you do the other. But it's not only a breath practice, but it's a sensory practice. And, if kiddos want you to, you could do it on their hand, right? So you're touching them in that moment, right? So you have that moment of connection. Or maybe they want to do it on your hand.
That's awesome.
Right?
I love that.
So that you can have that
That's
moment
a really
of
good
connection.
one.
Yeah, that's great. Those are awesome. We started recently doing the gratitude listing, but I love making it an active
Physical
part anyway, because again, just like with my clients, it gives them something to just focus on while they're doing the gratitude instead of sitting around and then they get restless. And
again, it's also relative, right? Like I was thinking about how relaxed my kids are, like in general, relative to other kids, but still, they still need a wind down by bedtime. And sometimes they're so riled up at bedtime, they still need to get more energy out. Like we went to dinner last night and then they rode bikes and scooters to dinner, and like that helped them wind down real quick. Yeah. By the time we got home, they were in a great place. We put the lights down. But having that wind down process for adults and kids, I find to be so vital, and I need it. My body craves it. I see it with the baby. Like, put the lights down, have some sort of like routine surrounding maybe it's essential oils or a diffuser, or just like the longer that you can extend that wind down process, the easier it's going to be mindful and take those breaths. But if you're all over the place still, it's really hard to get into like an awareness practice.
Yeah. And, I saw a meme recently that said something like a kid is never busier than the moment that you tell them they have to go to bed.
Yeah.
Right? That they come
I
up
need a
with
glass
the
of
things.
water.
Yeah,
I need to go
exactly.
pee. I need a hug.
And it also
Totally.
occurred to me when you were talking for your couples that you work with, what a great practice to do to each other
I love that.
before you go to bed.
Love
that
that.
one would do it on the other one's hand and then the other would do it, right?
Yeah,
And
because we crave that intimacy and that touch.
yes. And what a wonderful way to connect at night before going to bed.
I love that.
I love it.
A day's homework.
I get a lot of homework on these podcasts. Note, by the way, Sophie never does. I should start giving you all the same homework.
But
That's
it's
right.
like hard.
You're on glitter duty.
Yeah,
You're on
I'm
glitter
on
duty.
it. I'm already at the art store.
So as Sophie mentioned, we have 5 questions we ask every single one of our people. We found out that this is some people's favorite part of the podcast, which I love. So question number 1, what is the best advice you have ever received?
Advice I've ever received. I would say that the best advice I've ever received is to, this is going to sound kind of funny, but keep my mouth closed. I started in the world of real estate, and I come from a real estate family. And so it was really a negotiating tactic at the time, right? To say something and keep my mouth closed. But what it's morphed into today is being able to connect with other people. That when I am trying to figure out what I'm going to say next to a person, right, then I'm up in my head rather than connecting to them.
Yeah.
So it's sort of morphed into that.
I love that. We talk to our couples about that all the time, and I've had to get better at it doing this podcast. because people have so much they can give if I just don't get in their way, right? and kind of jump on each one of the points that I want to jump on.
Instead of trying to manage,
Yeah.
What about your proudest moment?
My proudest moment. There are a couple. The one that popped into my head first was graduating from grad school. For a person who was an active drug addict and alcoholic, who didn't know what she was going to do in her life and had no direction, the day that I walked across that stage was a really proud moment in my life.
I love it. I've had that exact feeling. I know it. It's amazing. It's pretty powerful, especially if, like me, let's say you came from a time where nobody thought you were ever going to walk across any stage that was respecting what was happening in your life and not a punishment of some sort.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, for sure. And what it was additionally for me was that it was also stepping into my own power. You know, coming from this real estate family, that I'm supposed to be a businesswoman. You know, I'm supposed to be doing that kind of work, and I'm good at it. I'm really good at it. It's soulless to me.
Yeah.
So following what was good for me in my dream,
great.
you know,
That's
was
awesome.
really powerful.
So if we flip that, what has been your hardest moment to date?
I think the day that I walked into my dad's office and said, I don't know if it's the drugs and alcohol causing the anxiety and panic, or the panic and anxiety that's causing the drugs and alcohol, but whatever it is, I need help. And that was hard because I came from a family of, we're Southern. And my parents are very right-winged, although I don't want to get political. I'm not. And I needed to be perfect.
You don't have issues,
especially in the South. Especially in the South.
Sweep that shit under the rug.
Under the rug. That's right. And you say, yes, ma'am. I am fine. And how are you? Yeah. So the moment that I had to go say that I had a problem was huge for me.
I think, especially depending on the culture and depending on specific family systems, sometimes that's actually the hardest step. Fixing things once you're able to admit that things are wrong is almost easier than just being able to step, because as you're talking about it, right? And if anybody's grown up in those cultures where you never talk about what's wrong, definitely not outside the house. Right. That's for sure. I mean, that you never bring in.
Right.
But even inside the house, figure it out. Just deal with it. And if you can't, you feel like you are somehow literally damaged. Like, what is wrong with me? Everybody else is fine because they're all pretending that they're fine.
That's right.
Everybody else looks 100% fine. And I feel broken. I feel like I literally can't make it one more day in this life. What's wrong with me? Why am I the only one? Whereas in reality, 80% of the people you see walking around you are having the exact same feeling inside, but nobody can share it. So it gets really debilitating.
That's right. I couldn't have said that better. And you sort of named such a big feeling for me, that the moment that I said I had a problem, it was like the weight of the world was off my shoulders, because I was being authentic again, like true to myself. And then, you know, that it's hard to be in recovery in the beginning stages. I mean, I'm many, many years from it now, but it was really hard in the beginning, but it was such a relief, right? Which made that hard work not a big deal, because, you know, I always say that there were two Ashleys running around the world. The Southern one that smiled and said, I am fine, and how are you? And then the drug addict and alcoholic. And I didn't have to be split like that anymore. I could just be me and get better.
It's interesting. In the work that I do now with addicts, I really try, and we don't have to get into this because it's not a recovery-based kind of podcast, but that's why I see so much damage in identifying as an addict and alcoholic versus the way that most treatment centers do it. Is there's so much judgment about what that means that once you take the label on, yes, once you're 20 years in recovery, you've made it your own. But in the early stages, just saying and admitting that you are one of those people is like diving off of a cliff with no parachute and just hoping that somebody will catch you along the way. And so most people aren't willing to do it, and it's a huge leap.
Well, it's what kept me, and again, like I know we're not going to get into this, but it's what kept me from saying I had a problem, because
Nobody wants to be those people.
Isn't in my mind, you know, a person like that was on the side of the road with a brown paper bag and a bottle of alcohol.
Yeah, they haven't showered in 6 months.
Exactly, and I wasn't that. I was perfect.
Of course.
And that's what's dangerous about labels. And then when you make it into that bucket, now you feel like you are the person. Like, all of a sudden you say to yourself, well, I mean, I'm going to lose everything. I mean, I know what alcoholics and addicts look like, and that's those people. And I just had to admit that I'm one of those people, and that gets really difficult for people.
Self-care rituals.
Ooh, I love self-care. So daily meditation. And that's
how much do you do? What and how and all that stuff?
It's such a great question. That sometimes looks like I sit down for 10 minutes. I have a meditation app called Evenflow where we incorporate, here it comes the plug for Evenflow. But we do incorporate psychological insights into the meditations. Okay. But we've made them around 10 or 11 minutes. Right?
Awesome.
Because
so
we get it. Exactly. So sometimes it looks like sitting down and listening to a meditation on that. Sometimes it looks like sitting down and just doing a breathing practice. Sometimes I take 10 deep breaths. Sometimes I meditate for a minute. Sometimes I walk around my backyard. It just looks like whatever I feel like that day. But I will say this, the ritual piece is really important. I was taught to ritualize it. So I light nang champa, which is a type of incense that I happen to love the smell. Me too. But I'm like Pavlov's dog now. When I light it, I think I'm supposed to meditate, right? Because I've done it every day for over a decade. We're like that with Palo Santo in this house. Yes, me too.
So good. I smell it and I'm immediately relaxed.
I just went to Peru and brought back a huge box of Palo Santo.
So good. Well, if you need, I have a good source.
Okay, good. Good. I probably will. Yeah. So meditation obviously is a huge self-care piece for me. Exercise is huge. Getting good sleep. I like to get a mani-pedi every other week, which is a really important piece of taking care of myself.
Yeah.
Just being touched and pampered and not a worry in the world.
That's exactly right. And I like the way it looks.
Yeah.
It makes me really happy and I feel put together. Exactly. Yes. And that's an important piece of it.
I dress like this, but I have a perfect mani-pedi.
Right, exactly.
I'm good. Like I could go on TV right now because my nails are done.
That's right.
I'm in my pajamas, y'all.
Said, and then, did I say exercise? I don't remember if I said exercise. Yeah, and good sleep.
Yeah. Sleep is so important.
It's so important. Yeah. And actually, right now, I'm gonna take some art classes.
Oh,
beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah,
Feed your soul.
I'm not an artist, but I love.
You're gonna be
doing art. I am. So that's going to be part of my self-care ritual.
That's awesome. That's fun. It's always fun to find.
Yeah.
I've said this for decades, but I think everybody has a creative spark in them. And a lot of us just completely let it go, whether it's music or painting or sculpting or whatever it is for you, crocheting. It doesn't really matter what it is for you, but something artistic and creative. And most of us just kill it because you can't make money in it. And so you just say to yourself, well, I'm not going to waste my time doing that. But the amount of self-love and expression that you get through it
fuels passion, and passion then makes you a better business person and everything, a better human,
better friend, everything.
Like you'll probably make more money if you make time and carve out time to be creative.
Right. And creativity, like you said, we sort of let go of it at a certain point, but it taps into play, right? Sure. Like we played when we were kids and we quit playing as adults. Yeah. And play actually will lower depression, right? Lower anxiety. There's science to show that, to
100%.
Harken back to what we did as kids.
My kids have healed me in more ways, like from like food issues to like any depression, like they've healed me in all those ways because I'm a kid again when I'm with them. As long as I allow myself to.
If you let yourself dive into it, absolutely.
Yeah.
I also talk to my adult client, like, when was the last time you laughed out loud? Yes. Like in that belly hurting laugh, the one where by the time you're done, you're like, I can't breathe anymore. Like that laughter that you used to do as a kid all the time. Most of them literally do not remember the last time that happened. And if you think of the impact on your biology and your body and your sense of life, what's the point? I mean, if you're not enjoying this, you get one round at this. It's not like when you get to the end, you can accumulate something that gives you another level. This is not a video game. Like you're done. At the end of this, you're done. And so, even if you believe in reincarnation, like you'll get to another stage, but you're going to start from scratch again. So what are you doing to actually make this an enjoyable experience for you? Which gets us right into the last question. And that is, what ignites you? this podcast is called Ignited. What gets you going? What's the thing that drives your passion?
The thing that, I think one of you guys said earlier, we teach what we most need to know, right? And I so desperately needed these tools as a kid. If somebody had just said to me, there's a tool that's inside you, that's always there with you, you can just take a breath and you might feel better. I too have a borderline mother. My biological mother, the one who I consider to be my mom, is my stepmom.
Same.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. But teaching these tools to kids and to families is what really ignites me, because when I see the light turn on in their eyes and they get it, or they come back to me and say, I was freaking out on my math test, and then, I remembered to bring my wise resource in, and my wise resource told me to take a breath, and I took a breath, or, I remembered and I did my little hand meditation and then they feel better. That's what lights me on fire. That's what ignites my soul, because I know I'm here to do this work, to teach kids and to teach families. And when I'm in that environment, I just know.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
This is the place
and that's
to be.
Generational impact, right? You can help that one kid.
That's what I'm
and
seeing.
you just helped an entire tree, right? Of whoever they connect with and whatever comes down path for them, you've just changed entire lives.
That's right. We break that transgenerational.
This next generation is going to be insanely in tune.
Yeah, that's right. I think, I really think if we can get parents to, to weave these practices then, and get that it's not about big pieces. You guys were talking about doing art with your kids. That's a mindfulness activity.
Absolutely.
Right there. Can you be right in that art project?
Yep.
Yeah.
You've done mindfulness.
Exactly.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming. We're going to have all the links to your stuff. Thanks
Can't
for all the
wait
work
to use
that you
your
do.
app.
Oh, yeah. Evenflow. It's so good.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Check it out.
It's really helpful for any of you moms who are up and down with little kids a lot, or if you just have trouble sleeping. I find guided meditation really helpful to get back to sleep. I just put it on my phone and then I pass out, and it's helped me throughout the years of being a parent, but just also just when I've experienced some anxiety and can't get back to sleep if I wake up in the middle of the night. So check out Evenflow.
Thank you. Yeah, we have, interestingly enough, we have actual sleep meditations on there. And then we also have meditations for new moms.
Oh, nice.
Right? Because there's never a busier time. So we've got specific
She's got
meditations
so much time
for
for
that.
herself right now.
I am
You're like
swimming. I'm at the spa all day, so.
Noah is not on her right now because she's sleeping, and it's like a gift.
And any minute she's going to cry.
Yes.
Thank you for all the
thank
work you do.
you.
Thanks for coming to see us.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
See you all next week. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.